Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hello, you're listening to the Cambridge Film Show, your fortnightly guide to the latest movie releases on the big screen and small. I'm Luke Irwin, and unlike Superman, who has soared back into our cinema screens this month, the only powers that the Earth's yellow sun have given me during our recent heatwave are perpetually damp clothes and sleepless nights. Luckily, we have a team of super reviewers flying into the sweltering Cambridge Radio studio to help cover this week's selections of films. We have Is It a Bird? No, it's Lorcan O'Neill.
Hello.
Is it a plane? No, it's Emma Marchant.
Hiya.
Is it a rogue weather balloon flying over the city centre? No, it's Matt Taylor.
Hello.
And is it someone's supermarket bag for life caught in an updraft? No, it's Stuart Pask.
Hello.
And I found my glasses. Here's Nick Kitchen.
Well, hello.
You'll be hearing from the gang throughout today's show, which is, of course, headlined by Superman, but we'll also be discussing a brand new Smurfs film starring Rihanna and John Goodman, Together at Last. There's also a fresh take on the classic slasher I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Friendship, a black comedy about one man's adoration with his neighbour. Elsewhere, we'll be discussing the latest streaming releases that you can watch from home, including a documentary celebrating the 50th anniversary of Jaws. And as we make our way through this week's reviews, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can get in touch with us on text or WhatsApp on 07919 070 490, and you can also email the show at studio@cambridge.radio. Hopefully we'll have time to read your comments as we go. But we get started this week by fighting for truth and justice and the American way. Do those things still go together?
Superman.
The most powerful being on planet Earth. We finally meet. Now, as planned, I'll destroy you. And of course, that reporter you always do interviews with. Who raised you as a child? I'll kill them too.
That was a clip from Superman, which wipes the slate clean with the erstwhile Man of Steel. The so-called gritty realism of Zack Snyder's era has gone, as are the wider machinations of the DC extended universe. We now start over with a new man in Lycra, the relative newcomer David Corenswet, while the project is written and directed by the veteran filmmaker James Gunn. In his version of the story, the last son of Krypton gets drawn into conflicts both at home and abroad, giving the tech billionaire Lex Luthor the opportunity to exact a classically convoluted evil scheme. Emma, I'll come to you first on this one. For as popular as Superman is as a character, he's had a pretty troubled history on film. We had the two great Christopher Reeves films, and then we've had a lot of struggled productions. We had one with Brandon Routh a few years ago, and we've had the Zack Snyder versions that we've discussed.
And I think Dean Cain TV show Smallville, which was a big hit.
How could we forget about that?
Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain, let's not forget them.
I think a lot of people now are very excited about James Gunn. So how does he manage to handle this story?
I was amongst the people who were excited about James Gunn, because obviously after that sort of torrid fallout when Disney got a little bit overwrought about his previous his tweets from a previous life, and then the sort of drama over Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I still think that probably Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most perfect trilogies of superhero films that are out there. So the thought of him coming to Superman was really exciting. And I think the good things about this film is I'd never seen or even heard of David Corenswet before, but for me, he embodies Superman in a way that I hadn't seen since Christopher Reeve. I said this before we came on air, I have a feeling probably Nick and I are the only people old enough in the studio to have gone to the cinema, to have seen, I think I saw a double bill of Superman 1 and 2 when I was about 8.
And don't forget 3.
Very true, but I didn't see that in my double bill. But
right.
Yes, he was. He's 3 as well. But yeah, they were spectacular. And what I think David Corenswet embodies is that sort of almost fumbling charm that Christopher Reeve had. One of the greatest things about Christopher Reeve films was the amount of Clark Kent you had in as well. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Clark Kent in this, because actually the scenes with Clark Kent were super charming, because that is David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, best known for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, have a delightful chemistry as Lois and Clark. And Lois and Superman. So these are the really good things. Crypto the Superdog, obviously, which is giving nothing away because it was in the teaser, it's right at the very beginning, is one of the most amazing pieces of CGI ever, and one of the most touching pieces of CGI ever. And I think what James Gunn does very well is to pull together a disparate band, like he's done in Guardians of the Galaxy. So in this, you do have Superman with his guys around him, if you like. It's not just about the Man of Steel. It fell down for me with a kind of convoluted story as to what was really going on, or where the baddies were, or who really cared about them. And it ended up, and I hate to sound like Peter Bradshaw, but it's true, it just ended up in that massive destruction of a city for no apparent reason, which I just found really tedious. And that was a real shame, because there is a sweetness and an energy to this, and James Gunn has brought a lot of his really good things to this. And I'm excited about this as a new franchise.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, and I'll come to you, Stu, on this. I want to go back to James Gunn, who is really well known for doing these big budget action films, but also bringing a ton of sentiment to these films. I mean, I apologise in advance for asking this question, but when I watched this film, I believed that a man could cry. How did you get on?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, we since 2013 we've had the Snyderverse, which has been a lot more cynical take on the MCU. A lot more sort of gritty, toned down CGI, which Man of Steel was an okay enough film, but then Warner Brothers and I guess I get a bit cynical at this point and say I think Warner Brothers got a little bit too got their claws into it a bit much and decided to turn it into a cash cow, and they thought they knew what audience wanted, and it turned out into this sort of gritty, dark universe, which is not what comic books are about. They're unless you're specifically getting into nitty-gritty like your Batmans and your Spawns and all those sorts of universes. Superman has always been a very colourful character, and one of the great things about this film is James Gunn has drawn his inspiration from the golden age of comics, going so as far back as the 1950s. That sort of really sort of bright style that back when comics were for kids, and with it comes that sort of that innocence and that hope and just that joy of superheroes again, which I am all here for.
Yeah, I thought this really embodied a very wholesome hero, although the film does put him in some difficult questions. Matt, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to ask you about the so-called woke liberal nonsense of this film, which I thought was really overblown, and I hope you agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. It's not woke at all. He's just a good guy. Like, that's really what it boils down to. There aren't any what you would describe as woke elements, and I think it's quite ridiculous that there's any sort of backlash against that. The thing that I would go out and say, I thought this was a good film, but it fell short of being a great one because it didn't quite stick the interesting questions that it set up in the opening act. Like the finale didn't quite work for me. I mean, I'm going to go to Man of Steel. I am a Zack Snyder fan. I do think he did good work. And the pivotal moment of Man of Steel is Superman deciding to kill to save innocence. And that was criticised a lot at the time because Superman doesn't kill. But I thought that went into a good level of detail about why he made that choice. Whereas this kind of sets up a similar level of reticence to kill. I mean, Superman's shown in an early action scene going out of his way just to try and save the life of a giant monster that's destroying the city. Superman in this film does not kill, but then we get to the finale and, I don't want to give anything away, but it's unclear whether he still has that same resistance to killing, and I felt that the moral weight of the final fight wasn't properly considered, and there's even one scene which almost seems to be played for laughs where he kind of spins around and lasers a bunch of soldiers and then they all sort of fall to the ground. I think, well, surely someone's at least suffered life-changing injuries there. But apart from the moral questions, I thought the vibe was fantastic. Like, great chemistry, great banter between all the cast, brilliant performances by David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, and I'm very, very excited to see what James Gunn does next with this.
Lorcan, are you similarly excited?
No. So I'm a huge fan of James Gunn, going back to his when he worked for a company called Troma, and I've always liked how he does gritty stuff, but he manages to balance things like horror and action with all this like deep felt emotion. And funnily enough, he wrote Dawn of the Dead remake, which is directed by Zack Snyder, so who knew that film would be the seminal nexus of our 21st century. I think for me, what I've always loved about James Gunn is his writing. It's always been really strong, but this really let me down. I think the dialogue is really shocking at times. The film opens up with this fight scene between Superman and this unknown guy called Hammer of Bavaria, and Lex Luthor's like calling out all these moves to do against Superman, and then halfway through, everyone in this operations center starts describing what's happening as if no one was briefed on the mission to kill Superman until halfway through. And it's all stuff they know, and that happens so many times in this film where everything is over-explained as if the audience is just so mentally deficient that they just can't follow along. There's lots of very, very strange payoffs. Like, there's a reveal of who that Hammer of Bavaria character is that feels like it's from a completely different film. That's enough there to be its own film. I was just like, what on earth is this? The way Superman defeats one of the female villains, played by Maria Gabriela de Floria, who is really, really, really shocking in this. James Gunn should be ashamed of himself for putting that performance in the film. So there's lots of payoffs that aren't set up. I mean, I just recently adopted a dog. The crypto thing should have really hit home for me, and it's so badly handled. Where it's just like they just get along well enough for the whole film, and then at the end they get along some more. So okay, I think the theme is all over the place. It's like, is it about finding your place? Is it about, home is where the heart is? Is it about social media being evil? Oh, all and none, I guess. And then also, just to talk about the visuals, when the film started off, I was so downcrest because it's shot in 1:8:5 flat ratio, which is what you use for dramas and horrors, for intimate scenes and a bit of claustrophobia maybe. The one thing you don't use 1:8:5 for is a big event superhero film. Whenever he's flying around, I want to see the sky. I want to see the space. Whenever he's flying around, I just felt like so stuffed in. And then I thought there was a horrible disconnect. But most of the film is interior on sound stages, and then anything exterior is just CGI big scape. And I felt such a disconnect between those two. So performances, most of the performances are the only thing that I really got along with for this film, sadly, which is no one's more disappointed than me by that.
Performances are quite important in a film, though, dare I say.
Well, also what the plot and characters and dialogue and theme and how the film looks.
All right.
Tone. Yeah.
All right.
Although, I agree with you. I thought the performances saved this film in a lot of ways. I'll come to you, Nick. Is that I think one of the real strengths of this film is the way that it handles the Lois Lane character. It's really struggled in the past. I think the first Superman film, the Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder one, was slightly awkward, and in the fact that you have a man seducing a woman who pretends to be someone else, and they kind of semi-fix that in Superman 2, where Margot Kidder finds out who Superman is, and we get a bit more female agency. We didn't have quite the same luck with Amy Adams' performance, which devastates me as a huge Amy Adams fan. But luckily, I've got a new woman to obsess over in Rachel Brosnan, who I thought was amazingly good fun in this film, and I thought she was a real well-handled, nuanced depiction of a woman who can both be needing to be saved but also has agency. And I think the way that she played that and the way that it was written was a real strength of this film.
Well, I mean, I don't have much to say that's not already been said, except on that, I felt that I do, to an extent, agree with Lorcan. I found it quite two-dimensional in places in the writing, and in this particular example with Lois Lane, it felt like the script was like a teenager kind of talking about relationships, and then the actual thought of real sex runs away terrified. I didn't really feel the strength of their relationship, if I'm honest. Nicholas Hoult, for me, was the standout performance. I thought his pent-up rage. What's this film about? It felt like a very human film to me, not really a Superman movie. And Nicholas Holt's rationale, his motive is envy, basically, which I thought was a very human emotion to go against sort of a superhuman. And I thought that worked rather well. I did get the 50s vibe very much as well. He was going back to it. But I'm kind of with Lorcan on and also Emma, she at the very start said this, I felt like a bit of a mess of a movie to me. I wasn't quite sure what I'd watched at the end of it. But then, Stu, you said to me, Gunn's got a 10-year plan for Superman, and I'd be interested to know where this goes, because to me this is Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, Guardians does Superman. It's really is a Guardians movie. I'd be interested to hear where it goes, but this felt like a set-up movie for a whole bunch of other stuff to come.
Can I just say really quickly, because of course none of us have mentioned the fact that you've got Nathan Fillion, Isabella Merced, thank goodness, saved from the dirge that was The Last of Us Season 2, and Eddie Gathegi, who I've seen nothing as Mr. Terrific, and Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, who were kind of like the three other because with this, like you said, it's interesting to send a world where everyone knows that Clark Kent is Superman, or Lois knows Clark Kent is Superman, so that's taken that whole
yes, thank heavens we didn't have to go through all that again.
And you have other meta-humans as well, which is quite interesting, and I did greatly enjoy. I thought they had a really nice chemistry as well, not to mention Anthony and NoHo Hank from Barry. Anthony Carradine, who is just delightful as a sort of as a side Rex, this sort of side metahuman who's been captured by Lex Luthor as well. There was so much. It's like he threw so much at this, and I guess it's going to see what sticks, like you say, to carry on for his 10-year plan maybe. And can I just say as well, Skylar Gisondo does indeed have all the riz that no one quite understands why. He is amazing. He was amazing in The Righteous Gemstones. He is my fake best friend. I love him. Go and see him just for Jimmy Olsen.
Well, his sex appeal does save the world without giving too much away.
Exactly.
Did you have something more? You had a final word, it sounded like, Stu?
I think it's been covered now, so...
Oh, right.
I'm sorry, was that me? Did I come in with the...
It's fine.
With the Green Lantern?
I'm glad that we ended on a positive note, because I personally enjoyed this film very much, so I'm glad that... I think generally a recommendation here, although there are certainly some reservations. That is Superman. It's a certificate...
I would definitely say, because I think after a disappointing run of superhero movies, right, and we've got the Fantastic Four, which we'll be covering on the next show as well, which there's high hopes for, but I do think in terms of a superhero summer movie, you could do we have done, and you could do a whole lot worse.
Well, there we go then. I'll reiterate, Superman 12A, for moderate violence, threat, injury, detail and language. It's kind of strange that tonally is some PG, the romance stuff, and then some of the violence is quite gruesome. Anyway, that is showing at all three Cambridge cinemas, the Light, the Everyman and the Picture House. Up next, we have another reboot featuring more iconic heroes in blue. Here's a trailer for Smurfs.
Are you ready to get pumped up?
Hello, everyone. I have big news. I found Smurf Village. I'm one step closer to total evil dominance.
Blech. Lame.
You're all lame.
Hit it, Papa.
So, hopefully everyone is at least vaguely familiar with the Smurfs. It has a rich history in TV and film and was originally a children's comic series. The stories are centred around little blue human-like creatures who all wear little white hats and they live in mushrooms and Smurf Village. The latest film is effectively a reboot of the series, and it kicks into action when Papa Smurf is kidnapped by a pair of evil wizards. And so Smurfette, played by Rihanna, must lead the townsfolk into a dangerous rescue mission. Nick,
yes.
You watch this one. I have to say, I'm hoping you can help me out here. Like, I have a general idea of what the Smurfs is, though. I said it in a slightly glib way there. But I've never read or seen any of these Smurfs, and I was kind of surprised that there are wizards in it. And I have no idea what this film is, so please enlighten me.
So... the Smurfs were created by Peyo in 1958. There's been 5 movies, somewhere in the estimated, no one really knows, but something like 4 to 8 billion has been made off the back of these little blue munchkins, I might call them. And they are, much loved for many generations by children. The problem is, what do you do? If you're going to turn it into a big screen movie, and you're going to try, what audience are you going to try to appeal to? I will start by saying, so just remind me again the writer, I've already forgotten.
Pam Brady.
Pam Brady, who's worked very closely, I know they're all laughing at me because I can never remember these days, worked closely with Trey Parker, and who of course we know from
South Park and Team America. She also wrote Hot Rod with Andy Samberg.
Writing, really interesting writing credits behind it, but quite adult writing credits. So you come into this thinking, this could be interesting. Maybe they're going to do something slightly subversive. Maybe not Team America Smurfs. I accept that might be a step too far, but maybe try to sort of subverted a little bit. Not least if you consider that the Smurfs' history, the Smurfs have been accused of, the early Smurfs were drinkers and smokers and drug addicts. That have been accused of being drug addicts. There's been accused of being hideous beasts created through alchemy and throughout the centuries. There's been a lot of controversy, weirdly enough, behind the Smurfs. So there's a rich history here to play on.
But this doesn't sound like the trailer that I just listened to.
This film does none of that. Absolutely none of it at all. It is a kids' movie strictly for the under 10s, probably for the under 7s, with an amazing voice cast, but a plot that is all over the place and makes no sense. Rihanna, strangely, is underused. I felt she was more of a sidekick to James Corden than the other way round, which in and of itself tells you where this film could have been better. It's got an amazing cast of characters that are hardly mentioned. Kurt Russell is in this as well, along as obviously John Goodman, and I can't even read that far, but if you read the voice credits on here, it's phenomenal. But does the movie go anywhere? The problem is, no, it doesn't. I've always had an issue with the fact that Smurfette, who's Rihanna's character, was created by Gargamel to tempt and lure the Smurfs into bad behaviour. It's very deeply sexist at the heart of this movie, and I couldn't get away from that. It then doesn't really explore any of the themes it's trying to talk about, which is being together and the usual sort of kids bits and pieces. It's basically Trolls with Smurfs in it, but Trolls had much more charm. The two songs in this aren't actually bad, but there are only two songs.
And does Rihanna sing the songs?
One of them, the other sung by James Corden.
Oh, goodness me.
I mean, again, why? When you've got Rihanna. There's not real... I mean, is this kryptonite to kids' comedy, I read somewhere? Or is this just my blue Belgium fun? I think it's bit of fluff for 7-year-olds.
So no good. But you hated it. Will small children like? I think that's.
I do think this will struggle massively at the box office. It was me and one other person in the screening that I saw, and I don't really know who this is going to appeal to, because there's very little for adults in it. There's a. I'm laughing now, but there is one Smurf called Sound Effect Smurf, and he introduces a couple of bleeps occasionally, which and then James Corden said, "But I only said Smurf," and I thought, well, that sums up the movie. Really, you could just bleep the whole movie and be done with it. What? No, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's a bleep.
So definitely not a recommendation from us. I'm afraid we have to move on. I think for your own sanity as much as the rest of us.
Yeah.
That's a Smurf. I mean, it is a certificate You don't see many of those these days.
Well, look, in its defence, it's a kids' movie for kids, so who am I to judge? I think I was just thinking...
As a reviewer for the Cambridge Film Show, I'd hope you were.
Okay. As a person with eyes and ears.
It just felt like they had an opportunity to do something slightly different. You can do more with a You than just this.
Anyway, so that is Smurfs. It's showing at the Light and the Everyman if you want to put yourself through that. Next up, who says Hollywood can't come up with original stories these days? It's time for our third reboot of today's show with I Know What You Did Last Summer.
What does it say? What if someone saw us?
Outside of us, no one knows what happened, right?
Hello?
Please stop! After a group of friends inadvertently cause a deadly car accident, they cover up their involvement and make a pact to keep it a secret. But wouldn't you know, the past comes back to haunt them when they learn a mysterious stalker knows what they did. Lorcan, this is a remake of a film of the same name from the late 1990s, which wasn't a critical or commercial hit, I don't believe, but it's left a sizable imprint on our culture, and it's sort of revitalised the slasher genre, and we're still seeing its effects now. So it's in an era where we're having like Scream 7 and a ton of remakes, like remaking Halloween. where does I Know What You Did Last Summer fit in?
Well, I mean, after Kevin Williamson wrote Scream, which came from a sincere place of he's a big horror fan, he wanted to kind of send up the genre. And then after Scream was a big hit, they're like, do that again. And he's like, okay. So I guess he found a novel called I Know What You Did Last Summer, and adapted it into this quickie kind of who's popular at the minute, shoved them in this murder mystery, spooky guy killing them. And I Know What You Did Last Summer is a perfectly serviceable thriller. It's more of a thriller than a horror, really. Why it, I think it's just the title. That is a killer title. For this one, it's when it started off, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the characters were surprisingly nuanced. I liked them for different reasons. There's quite a few good comedy moments in the first half. Freddie Prinze Jr. shows up, and that's lovely. And then Jennifer Love Hewitt shows up, and you're like, okay, this is okay. They're getting a bit much, especially because the film claims to have an anti-nostalgia theme underlying it. I think for the first half, I can't remember the name of the director. Can we?
Jennifer Caton Robinson.
Jennifer Caton Robinson, who also wrote the script for this. I think she does a pretty good job. She's got some good horror chops. Whenever you have your first kills, it feels very big, and when the fisherman shows up, you hear the boots, and you really feel his presence. And there's some unique kills, but as the film goes, the presence wanes. The kills don't become very creative or interesting. The characters become kind of lopsided. And it's just it goes exactly where you think it is in a really disappointing way. And yeah, that was my experience.
I'm sorry to hear that. Matt, you've seen this as well, and I wanted to bring up Jennifer Caton Robinson because her last two credits are the romantic comedy Somebody Great, which obviously I've seen and I loved that, and she also did Do Revenge, which we reviewed very positively on the show, and that's sort of a black comedy, and she seems to really touch on interesting characters and character dynamics, and it seems like we've got a big cast of characters here. So how do they all come together?
Yeah, not great. I mean, you called this a remake. I think it is technically a sequel because it does follow the events of the first movie, although seemingly retconning out of existence. I still know what you did last summer, and I'll always know what you did last summer. So
in that respect, it's the same as what they did with Scream, isn't it?
Well, and Halloween as well.
Yeah, it's a new cast of characters, but it's set in the same.
Well, Scream, I don't think retconned any of the previous sequels, whereas Halloween did.
I think Scream retconned.
Did it?
3 or 4, yeah.
Oh, possibly. Well, I'm no expert, but I definitely don't care what anyone did last summer or any other summer at this point. It started off reasonably well. I thought the introduction of the fisherman was very well done. There's a sort of cool kill sequence that's in the trailer of one character in a bathtub listening to some guided meditation while her fiancé is being viciously harpooned to death downstairs. And that's done quite well. But as it goes on, the sort of self-awareness kind of fades away and it just becomes a pretty generic 90s style slasher. And a lot of the later kill sequences are done in broad daylight, so there really isn't any tension or horror. It's not terrible, and I think that this director has got a good future ahead of her because she has soundtracked this quite nicely. There are a few good kind of summer bangers in there, but I was just quite bored, and I really hated almost all of the cast. I think the lead actress of Chase Sui Wonders, who I think was really good in The Studio on Apple, I think she was good, but the rest of the cast, I just thought, I hate these people, I want them to die. And I thought maybe that's the intention, but I think the film was needing me to find them sympathetic for it to work, and it just didn't. And then the reveal of who's the killer and why was just so dumb. It's like, well, who didn't see that coming?
I was surprised at how funny the first half of the film was, but it's only funny because the characters are so icky,
so horrible,
and you're waiting for them to get the worst imaginable deaths, and then especially with one character it doesn't. It's like, well, that's quite questionable in general, isn't it?
But then when the motivation for the killing spree is revealed, you just think, okay, well, that's fine, but then why did you kill the poor janitor at the graveyard? What does he have to do with all this?
Well, there we go then. I think that's a lukewarm review, or as I'd call it, a warm review. That's I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's a certificate 15 for strong bloody violence, injury, sex, language, etc. And that is showing at The Light.
Cambridge Radio.
Discover the day with Cambridge Breakfast.
7 o'clock. Good morning.
We're running initially a driverless bus that's a 16-seater out of Madingley Park and Ride.
We really do know people in our local area.
Now with the rest of the morning sport, here's Lewis Mason.
Cambridge Breakfast, Monday to Thursday at 7 with Julian Clover.
Inch of Music, number 455.
And Fridays with Lyndon S.
I'm in the middle of changing my phone. It's horrible.
From Cambridge Radio.
If you're over 60, now's the time for luxury retirement at Rangefords, Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. Make friends in their vibrant community. There's a restaurant and bar with a swimming pool and clubhouse facilities opening soon. Worry-free retirement at Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. Take a tour of their show apartments and make it your place to call home.
RangefordVillages.co.uk. Exclusively for over 60s. This is Cambridge Radio.
Cambridge Radio.
Cambridge Film Show.
This is Cambridge Radio.
Welcome back to the Cambridge Film Show on Cambridge Radio. I'm Luke Irwin, and with me today are Lorcan O'Neill, Emma Marchant, Nick Kitchen, Matt Taylor and Stuart Pask. If you're just joining us, you've missed out on our discussions of Superman, Smurfs and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I can assure you, you've not just woken up from a 20-year coma. But if you have been out of the loop, you can always listen back to today's show and all of our previous ones online. We're available as a podcast on your smart speaker and on YouTube. You can find us on the Radio Player app or by searching Cambridge Film Show wherever you get your audio. As for today's show, we have 3 streamers coming up, but before we get to those, we have one more cinema release for you as Tim Robinson desperately wants to spend some time with his new neighbour in the black comedy Friendship.
Honey, the new neighbor invited you over for a drink at 8 tonight. I said you'd go.
You don't know my schedule.
You sit there every night. Might be nice to have a pal, you know, a bud.
Hey guys, this is my neighbor Craig. He's the best. I was just spiraling. I mean, I see the way the guys look at her. I'm scared.
Sheila's lucky to have a dad like you.
That was the trailer for Friendship. It stars veteran TV funny man Tim Robinson as an awkward office worker who becomes enthralled by his charming neighbour, played by Paul Rudd. For anyone familiar with the comedy stylings of Tim Robinson, best known for his surreal sketch comedy, you can expect things to take a weird turn from there. Matt, you watched this one. Were you a fan of Tim Robinson's?
Yeah, I mean, Tim Robinson is an absolutely unique performer, famous for his Netflix sketch shows, I Think You Should Leave, where the joke is always everything goes on a little bit too long and then it starts becoming funny again. This is real cringe comedy to the max, and I think every single line of dialogue that Tim Robinson has in this is unbelievably awkward, and if you find that style of comedy grating, you'll just absolutely hate this. I think there's a really rich vein of content to explore here when you're talking about friendships, because it's arguably the most important form of relationship we have, but there's so little media that explores it. I mean, The Banshees of Inisherin is one that springs to mind, but beyond that, there isn't really much media that goes into what responsibilities do you have to your friends and what makes a friendship work and when is it reasonable to end one. And I think the film does kind of go into that for the first half hour or so, where Tim Robinson's character kind of develops a bit of a man crush on his new neighbour, Paul Rudd's weatherman. But then after that first half hour where the friendship breaks down because Tim Robinson's just Tim Robinsoning too hard, then it just becomes a sequence of sketch bits of really awkward moments. And I would say that I enjoyed that to an extent, but I was kind of very much ready for it to end by the conclusion of the film, which is a shame because I think the first half hour is really strong.
Wow, look, and I think a film that this has been compared to, perhaps by people who haven't seen it, was the recent film The Ballad of Wallace Island, which does a similarly sort of thing with Tim Key being awkward, but I think this is a very different type of humour, isn't it?
Yes, oh god, Ballad of Wallace Island is a 5-star masterpiece compared to this pile of whatever it was. This was, yeah, Matt's right, there isn't a lot of films that go into the topic of friendship, and I mean, Wallace Island was a lot about, as much about love as it was about this friendship that blossoms, but there is not a lot of films about friendship, and this isn't one of them. This is just another film that's not about friendship. They cast Paul Rudd presumably as some kind of reference to what was it? I Love You Man. I Love You Man. What's the friendship film with Jason Segel?
I Love You Man.
I Love You Man. But it's not like a Freddie Got Fingered, the Tom Green film, which is a send up of all the kind of rom-coms that were coming out in the 90s in a really clever way. Tim Robinson is just I cannot stand Tim Robinson's comedy. It's not like Matthew said, it will grate on some people, and I'm one of those. He's not a character in this. Everything he says and does isn't all cohesive to one character. It's just whatever is awkward in the moment, that's what he'll do. Like, God, I couldn't wait for it to end. And it wasn't just the last hour. The whole thing is just, it's a sketch. And so when you meld all these sketches together into a film, nothing makes any sense. The character motivations don't make any sense. All the characters just fizzle away. And the film just ends up not being about friendship at all, which, if that's a joke, I don't know if that's a very satisfying payoff.
But there are plenty of very well-regarded comedy films that are essentially a series of sketches. So you think about, a lot...
But not character dramas.
Is this a character drama?
I think this sets itself up, certainly in the first half hour, as more of a comedy drama, and you think it's going to explore the difficulties of new friendships, especially.
And you're supposed to feel the emotional weight of certain choices, and you just don't.
But it is very hard to believe Tim Robinson's character as a real human, because you're sort of dropped in, and he always does the most maximal awkward thing at any moment. And you think, well, how did this guy get a wife and a child and a job if he's going to be behaving like this constantly? But I do find there's something just kind of oddly watchable about him. Just the way he'll just like drop his phone and then start swearing extremely vigorously, and even though it's not, I don't know, I think it's very acquired taste, and I have acquired it.
But you're laughing while thinking about the film, and
I enjoyed it.
That's the same approach that I had. Like, the film was absolutely incoherent in many places for me, and I definitely agree. The middle third just does something that just loses itself completely. But whenever Tim Robinson's on screen, I was just laughing my head off the whole time. I would say I really enjoyed it, and I'm the host, so that's the most important factor today. That is Friendship. It is a certificate 15 for strong language, and it is showing at the Picture House and the Everyman. And we turn our attention to home streaming releases for you now, beginning with Jaws at 50, a documentary that, as the title implies, celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Steven Spielberg film Jaws, which most of us in the room have seen. Some of us haven't. We'll come to that in a moment. We don't have a trailer for this one, but I think we're familiar with what Jaws is and what documentaries are. Emma, I'll come to you first on this one. A lot has been said or written about the making of this film, not least because of how wildly popular it is, but because of its famously troubled production. So how does this documentary tackle a very familiar topic?
In a very familiar manner, I would say. Jaws is... I feel like Emily Blunt, who is one of the talking heads who's on here, who just kind of waxes lyrical about how incredible Jaws is. Well, I get it, Emily. Jaws is, of course, an incredible film, Stuart. We'll come to you later. It is, quite marvellous, and it's 50 years old, and it's a work of genius, and it's I feel all of this, and this and Jewel, for this and Jewel to have put Steven Spielberg onto our maps, and the fact that he still was making films as great, in my opinion, as West Side Story only 3 years ago, just goes to show what an incredible artist this man is. And yes, we all know about the phrase jumping the shark, and Bruce the Mechanical Shark, that didn't work, and Robert Shaw getting so drunk that he couldn't perform some of his. We know all of this. I also must admit, I have to hold my hand up and say, I went to go and see the play that was written by Robert Shaw's son, and
Ian Shaw called.
Yes, Ian Shaw. And what's the play called again?
The Shark is Broken.
There you go. And it was like a three-hander, which Ian Shaw wrote, and he plays his own father in it, Robert Shaw, and it's he, Roy Scheider, and Richard Dreyfuss, and the kind of the working relationship they had, because they were all very prickly as well. I do believe that Richard Dreyfuss was taking a lot of drugs during the whole thing. I think Robert Shaw was drinking. But so this is a very, very deferential and unexciting documentary about a film that is just a work of genius. So In my opinion, don't bother watching Jaws at 50. Just put Jaws on again.
Wow, well, there we go. Nick, you've seen this as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
I think, for me, this is a film that really focuses on as Emma alludes to, sort of the cultural legacy of Jaws rather than the filmmaking itself. There's a similar documentary from a couple of years ago about the making of Psycho, which has the editor Walter Murch comes on and he explains the editing of the film and what makes that film so great. And the whole time I was watching this, it's like, I want someone to explain why this film is so great. I don't want Emily Blunt and Steven Soderbergh sitting there saying Jaws was really great, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they do have an impressive list of action directors come along and sing its praises in exactly the way that you've just suggested, which you don't particularly need. Although I found James Cameron sort of damning with faint praise, going, "Oh, the reason we celebrate this is because we think of it when we saw it at the time," which is basically describing these kind of documentaries. They're always kind of just a nostalgic reminiscence. And they even ask Spielberg, I mean, at the very beginning, they say, "Do you think we'll learn anything we don't know that you haven't already said over the last 50 years about Jaws?" And he literally smirks at the camera and goes, "Well, let's see." And we think, so we probably won't then. But that said, I absolutely love Jaws as a film. It will always be in one of my top 10 lists of all time, I suspect. And I'm never bored watching things about Jaws. Did I learn anything new about it? No, although only 8 professional actors were in this movie. That I didn't realise, it was only 8. Everybody else is an islander or a sort of just, you'll do, come on.
Yeah, the best parts of the film were when they talk about the people who live on the real-life island and interview
which
them.
I always knew that was the case, but only 8 professional actors. I didn't know that. And the other thing I got out of it that I thought the documentary did quite well was, you got a sense that Spielberg didn't really want to talk about this, that it was a very emotionally scarring experience for him. Even 50 years on, he talks about lying in the boat. I won't go into what he does, but basically I got a sense that it damaged him for a long time. And I got a little bit of that sense out of the documentary. Other than that, Emma's right. It's by the numbers.
That was such a frustrating moment where he begins to touch on how traumatic this experience was, and then he just goes like, "Oh, but the film was really successful and everything worked out fine."
He doesn't want to talk about it.
And it's like, "Oh, I wish that was the documentary."
Yeah.
Anyway, we come to someone who I think will have learnt a lot from this film now, Stu. So you've seen the documentary, but you've not seen Jaws.
Yeah.
So can you explain your thought process?
So first and foremost, apologies for appearing on such a prestigious film review show such as this without having seen such an iconic film. But I've just not got around to it. In all honesty, it's just not ever been at the sort of front of my queue on the proverbial to-do list. But also, it's one of those films that's so intrinsically embedded in our pop culture. It feels like I've seen it because I understand a lot of the references, both on screen and off screen, and I've heard a load of the stories that they talk about in the documentary before, just sort of on the periphery almost. So a lot of it wasn't a huge surprise to me, despite the fact I've not seen the film. However, what it has done, and what I do enjoy, is I like seeing how things made. And, a lot of the stories and things, again, are things I've heard before, but it has encouraged me and reminded me that I do need to go and see this film, and I will do it, if not tomorrow, then certainly this week.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, actually, on to what you just said. You feel like you've seen the movie. Soderbergh says at the end of the documentary that Jaws supercharged the language of cinema, which I think is absolutely right. And I don't think we would have had Superman without Jaws, because 2 or 3, it was 77, 78, Superman came out. It was probably... But I think Jaws, the blockbuster that was Jaws, it was the first summer blockbuster. It kickstarted that whole thing. I think it gave studios the courage to put into production some of these mega big productions, for better or for worse.
Well, it's all in Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, which I really do highly recommend if no one's read that. That is, Jaws is one of the key parts of that 70s studio lore, if you like, in the films that were coming in, Jaws and Star Wars and that sort of thing. And
they also made a documentary of that book. So if you're interested in films and not reading, then that's another thing. And then, Stu, you can watch the documentary and you don't have to watch any of the films that they reference in it.
I'll just do it completely in reverse again. I'll watch the film, then I'll read the book, and then for an encore, I'll go and read the original Jurassic Park book as well.
Well, there we go then. That's Jaws at 50. If you've seen Jaws or not seen Jaws, then you may get something from this film, but it's I think very much depends on how much you're interested in Jaws. I don't think this has a certificate. I think it was probably...
It's on Disney, right?
Yeah, but I think it would probably be a 12A, but, I mean... Jaws itself is probably an 18 or 15. Yeah. So it's So it is. There are some graphic elements in there, and that is showing on Disney Plus. And we head over to Sky Cinema now for I Don't Understand You, a film that starts as a comedy and then becomes something else entirely.
We haven't matched with her yet, so don't get too invested.
Hi.
It's so great to meet you. Can we see your belly?
Yep.
Wow. You still have your wallet?
It's in my front pocket.
Okay, because there's a lot of pickpockets.
Oh my
here.
God, it's in my front pocket.
Okay, that's what I was trying to be sexy there.
You were not.
Dom, I make you a special reservation for your anniversary. Anything at all, call me. And be careful.
Be careful.
I didn't love that. Do you think he meant because I was driving?
Or because we are...
gay.
That was a clip from I Don't Understand You, and I'm not entirely sure that audio will have prepared you what's to come here. You think you're watching a comedy drama about a gay couple played by Nick Kroll and Andrew Rannells, who are going on holiday to Italy to celebrate their anniversary and to escape the stress and disappointment of trying to adopt a baby. But during their trip, they take a wrong turn, quite literally, and now they have much bigger problems. Lorcan, you enjoyed this one.
Yes. I did, because it was funny. I really like Nick Kroll. I'm not too familiar with Andrew Rannells, other than he was the original Elder Price in the Book of Mormon with Josh Gad, I believe. They were delightful. I was completely sold with them as a couple. The opening of the film has two jobs: set up the two of them as an incredibly likable, relatable couple, which I did. I really enjoyed both the performances. I thought they had fantastic chemistry together. And the other thing I had to set up is that only Nick Kroll can speak any Italian, even that's very broken and quite poor. And yeah, it starts off as a flat out kind of just travel comedy, but mercifully we're spared from A-list actors in fancy locations on holiday, and then they film scenes in the morning. It turns into just... This won't work for a lot of people. I know it won't work for a lot of people because the genre twists a lot. But what I thought a lot about during this was The Last Supper, a film that came out in the mid-90s, which I loved. For whatever reason, I've watched that film 100 times or so. It really funny, but really dark and gritty. I haven't seen Shallow Grave. I imagine Shallow Grave might touch on this a little bit as well. No,
I think Shallow Grave is much more of a straightforward thriller.
It's much more of a horror. So this starts off as a light and fluffy comedy, and then it gets, as this couple go to Italy, they go to this rustic little house where a little old Italian lady whose son has just recently passed away, and she's given up any hope of maintaining this restaurant, but she'll do it one more time for this lovely couple who's been recommended to her. And then things go awry in very upsetting and grisly ways, but the couple have to persevere because they spent an entire year rigorously trying to get a child for adoption. They finally got one ready for adoption. The lady's about to give birth, and they can't do anything to risk losing that. And I was totally with them. I was like, if I was in their situation, I probably would have done everything the exact same way.
Well, there we go. Emma's been making faces the whole time you've been talking, Lorcan, so I think we'll just have to let you go now.
I will very quick. Well, because I think Matt's probably going to be kinder about it than I am as well. Right, I haven't seen The Last Supper. What this reminded me most of all, and I can tell you that is also a terrible film, is Very Bad Things. One of Peter Berg's
this is much better. This is much better than
Is it though? One of Peter Berg's very early films with Cameron Diaz and Christian Slater about a bachelor party that goes awry, and again they continue to do terrible things to cover their tracks from the earlier accidental terrible things that may have happened. I love Andrew Rannells. He's in Girls, the Lena Dunham HBO comedy show, and I've seen and he's a great stage presence, and he just is charming, as is Nick Kroll, wonderful with all the voice work he does as well. So yes, I was banking for them. By the end, I was not, and I didn't know how I was meant to feel. I was like, these people are awful. They are just doing awful thing after awful thing after awful thing. Of course, they don't deserve to have a baby. It's meant to be a satire because they're American and they're getting away with it because they're just going to be able. Is it? What is this? I don't care. I found the farcical situation so awkwardly set up from the very beginning when they're randomly given this dinner anyway to go to the middle of nowhere. It was like, this is so unbelievable. I couldn't get on board with it, and it just made me cross. It made me really, really cross.
Well, there we go. We've got two quite conflicting reviews. Matt, you can be our tiebreaker on this one.
Well, as I say, I'm 50-50 on this because I thought the character work and the two central performances were really strong, but then the situation and it is literally halfway through the film, it just switches to now it's a horror film. That really didn't work for me. I should just address the title, because the I don't understand you of the title refers to the fact that they have a series of misunderstandings throughout the film, whereas in the first half they perceive themselves as being the victim of homophobic microaggressions, when in reality people are just being nice. And in the second half of the film, they perceive themselves as being the victim of threats of extreme violence, when in again people are just trying to be nice to them. So, but it just seems like such a strange idea to base the entire film around, and I would have preferred it much more if it was just about this gay couple having a holiday on Italy as they try and get their heads around the enormity of adopting a baby. So yeah, a very strange mishmash.
I did enjoy that little bit at the end though, where there are some Italians who are similar, who are sort of opposed as a similar couple to our anti-hero American couple at the end, and are also in the last 10 minutes they're also getting a load of misunderstandings. I did enjoy that bit, and I did maybe laugh twice.
Oh, even the bit at the end where the police have come up to kind of clean the mess, and they're trying to find out who it is, and even the police officer thinks that the one remaining witness is being horribly homophobic. Well, no, I thought this was a lot of fun. I assume from the post title, there's a little card that comes up at the end. I assume this was written and directed by a gay couple who probably were like, what if this actually happened, and they riffed with it, which is quite sweet as well.
But I think tonally messy doesn't go anywhere close to describing how tonally awkward this is.
Well, I thought it was murky, but I didn't think the tone was off.
Anyway, well, there we go. If you want to laugh twice, then you can watch I Don't Understand You on Sky Cinema. It's a certificate 15 for strong violence, injury, detail, language and threat. And we're on to the final film of today's show. The time has really flown by. We've only got a few minutes for this one. It's a curious thriller called Brick, which is available on Netflix. There's no trailer for this one as it's a German language film, but nearly everyone in the room has seen it. The film stars Matthias Schweighofer and Ruby O. Fee as two occupants of an apartment building that is mysteriously engulfed by a brick wall that traps its residents inside. Stu hasn't seen it. Matt, this sounds like a fun, straightforward premise. How did you get on with it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an interesting premise, but what it really reminded me of was that music video from about 15 years ago, Turned Down for What, where the people keep bursting through the floors of their apartment to the floor below, and that was about the most interesting thought I had while watching this. I'd say it's a cool setup, but then doesn't really do much that interesting with it, and I think ultimately there's more interesting things you could be watching.
Oh, well, that was nice and brief. Wow.
Well, we're low on time. Everyone's seen it.
I was expecting more. Okay, well, Lorcan, we tend to be quite critical of Netflix on the show and not entirely unjustified, but I always mention how positive it is that you'll have these foreign language films are widely accessible and you just don't get them in cinemas anymore. Should I be eager and excited that we're getting a German language film on Netflix or not?
Oh, well, I watched the dub, so I couldn't tell you. This was a I'm not watching.
Face of shock.
It's the film that has the audacity to ask the question, what if two people were stuck in an apartment? It's just I quite like this genre of like films like Cube that Netflix has seemed to adopt, of what would you do. It's effectively people stuck in a room and asking what would you do if you were in this situation, and Netflix rode that with The Circle and The Platform 1 and 2, and they seem to be trying to do the same thing, except all those other films are visually quite interesting. They're quite creative with the setting of the room that they're in. This is just a bloody apartment, and then they're trying to get out, and it doesn't make any sense, and that's kind of pathetic. I'm sorry.
Oh,
wow.
Gosh. Nick, How did you get on?
Oh gosh, I don't have much to add to that, really. I'm with you. The Cube came to mind for me, but the difference with the Cube was it was kind of interesting, curious, and kept you wanting to know what was coming up. And it also had some kind of interesting death sequences involved as well. There was some a fair bit of gore. This didn't really have any of that. The characters felt very two-dimensional, particularly the old man, as he was talking about his paths. I thought, well, what's he want? I'm sorry, this is very rude, but what's he mumbling on about? I couldn't even understand what he was saying. But
did you watch the dub as well? Did you have the subtitles?
No,
that was very clear.
No, I was actually I was reading the subtitles. So maybe the fact that I can't understand German didn't help. But the ultimate problem with this movie is the payoff simply isn't there. Concept movies like this are easy to set up. You think, oh, this is a great idea. You know, they're trapped in a thing, blah blah. But where do you go with it? And this goes precisely nowhere, unfortunately.
And it's called Brick, but the wall around it is not even made of brick.
I watched it.
That could be a translation thing. I bet it was called something different in German, and they had to come up with a one-word title. What was it? Drywall was made of. That's what the film title.
I don't think I hated it nearly as much as all of you guys did, but then I didn't do the sacrilege of watching it with the dub. I found Matthias Schweighöfer and Rubio Fee quite believable as a couple at the beginning, who are having their own emotional issues, and you know, this is obviously it's like an allegorical thing. They're trapped in their apartment, they're trapped in their emotions, they have to let go.
That was so obvious.
I know, I'm not saying it wasn't thuddingly obvious, but I had quite a good time for an hour and a half. It reminded me of a kind of, I feel like I've read Stephen King short stories, which start off with this kind of premise, but then they end up maybe being more supernatural, and this didn't end up being supernatural. It just ended up being a whole mismatch, like you say, of kind of, you know, conspiracy theories and concern. However, I was just in Hamburg, so it's quite fun to see the Hamburg skyline at the beginning. I was like, oh, a film set in Hamburg. And like you say, Netflix is giving us the opportunity to watch some foreign language films with big stars. I mean, I think Matthias Schweighöfer is a big German star, right? And I think it's quite interesting to see what other countries are bringing out. I had an okay time with it. It gets 3 stars from me.
Oh, and that sounds brilliant, the way things have been going. Anyway, that's Brick. It's a certificate 15 for horror, injury, language and violence, and it's showing on Netflix. And I think we have just enough time on a very difficult week to get people's movies of the week. We'll start with Matt.
Oh, definitely Superman. Not even really close.
Emma?
It's got to be Superman.
I don't understand you. It just hit me in my weird little spot there. It just worked for me.
Maybe we can talk more about your little spot later.
I mean, I'll go Superman, but I would caveat with it's not a very strong week.
And I will say, I don't understand you, Lorcan. It's definitely Superman.
That's good. Oh yeah, for me it's Superman as well. Anyway, that's all we have time for this week. Please join us again on Saturday, the 2nd of August, where Hollywood's relentless pursuit of reboots and remakes continues apace as the Marvel Cinematic Universe takes on its biggest challenge yet as it attempts to make an entertaining Fantastic Four film. Elsewhere, Liam Neeson takes on the mantle of his near namesake Leslie Nielsen as The Naked Gun makes its big screen return. And if you're interested in an original film, the closest you'll get is Alison Brie and Dave Franco in the body horror Together. Just don't read about the lawsuits. I don't know how much time we'll have to cover that next week. And I believe there's also a film called Bring Her Home. But until then, it's goodbye from our reviewers.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me.
Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.